Welcome to MedX TV. We are all about micro trainings for professionals, and I'm so excited to have Patrick Ketchum here. He is a client and becoming a friend. I'm so excited to have him here talking about what he does, what he's done for our community, and his ability to just scale a company, a couple companies, from literally 0 to over 1,000 now, like in under a year. You guys, this is crazy. So I'm so excited to have him here. Patrick, tell us about your businesses. What have you been doing?
Yeah, thanks. So we got started last year in March. Yeah. So right when the pandemic was starting to heat up and the stock market was starting to close down, we saw this huge void in the market that a lot of companies, countries, states, and municipalities were having a hard time getting their folks tested, right, to see if they had the COVID virus. And so even getting supplies was a huge problem, right? So first of all, it was like,
aside from toilet paper, like medical supplies.
Toilet paper you weren't going to get anywhere. So literally the first thing we did was send 747s to China to pick up supplies and get them over, because if you went through regular routes, the government just took the stuff, right? Yeah. And so the state of Utah came to us and was like, okay, can you help us get some of these supplies? Yes, so we delivered those, and it was just going to be kind of a one-time thing. A few businesses got together to help out, and they said, okay, wait a minute, can you help us with testing as well? And we're like, I think so, I think we can. so a few of us got together. My role was really operationalizing it, getting the ground teams together, finding these nurses and other healthcare workers, making sure that we had orchestration and training and all that kind of thing. And so we got started, and it just blew up from there. We went all over the country doing it.
Yeah, you're in multiple states now. You got all these workers, and it was so quick. A lot of my clients are in your same situation, but not on that magnitude, right? We grow from 0 to 50 maybe in a year is huge, but 1,000 is crazy. So how, I think some of the best lessons we learn are in our failures, and you know that because I make everybody talk about their failures for the week. So what were the hardest lessons that you learned in the last year in growing that quickly?
First of all, I never fail, so I can't be totally, okay. So failures, I think you know a lot of them.
I want to know your personal, what's been the hardest thing for you to learn? What was a lesson that you wish you would have known at the beginning? First you're starting up and you're like, holy crap, now we're huge.
Well, I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, this is true of me, is I think one of my biggest weaknesses is also one of my biggest strengths, which is that I make decisions very quickly. It's like, here are the options, here's 10 options, and I'll just be like, okay, number 3, let's go.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just need to slow down a little bit more at the beginning. Yeah. So I think one of the biggest things is how you set up a company at the very start, right? It's not just applying to the state, opening up a bank account, and going from there. It's actually really important to find a business attorney who can make sure that you've got the stock figured out in the company, the shares, that you're...
Kathy Campbell.
Yeah, exactly. That you've got a board of directors elected, and you know who that's going to be, because, we'll talk about this later on, but these 2 companies I actually just sold last week and went to work. I know.
1 week. That was so awesome.
I know. That was fun. So, and now I'm working for the company that purchased those 2, and so we're still doing it, but with a little bit more streamlined or more resources. So I think that was a huge part of it. As you know, we started hiring on people, and it was very mission driven, and we didn't have an HR organization. And so we've had to really go backwards and figure out some of those things that we could have done more easily if we had planned it from the very beginning.
Are you giving MedX a plug?
Yeah, just a little bit. Probably talk to her before you hire 1,000 people.
Thank you, I'll take that. Well, you guys did that so quickly. How do you motivate a team in a pandemic in multiple states, when you're growing so fast? How do you get everybody to show up every day?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I have actually thought about this, because we obviously go out and hire all the time, and so how are we getting these people to be motivated? And they're working, 18-hour days a lot of times in the trenches, and you've got the nurses who are doing this work on the front lines where it's dangerous, but you've also got people who are working on IT things in the background and, you know, fixing reports at 1 in the morning, or you've got people who are organizing these folks and driving their car all across different states and trying to pick up, you know, a tent at the last minute or whatever. So how do you motivate those people? I have no idea, except that you need to have the right people, right? I just call them, you know, and I've worked in other industries where you just find these people who are so passionate about it. You know, you just need a team of killers who are willing to kind of leave it all on the field every day and who believe in the mission, right? So I think it's the very first part of that where you find people who are super mission driven. Like if it's all about the paycheck, if it's all about, you know, hey, I gotta achieve this lifestyle goal because I'm a big video gamer, whatever it is, it's probably not gonna work. We've had those people kind of come in and dip out very quickly once they realize the level of intensity that it took. But I'm this way. I like to work somewhere there's a very strong mission statement because, you know, I'm trying to find meaning in my life, not just a paycheck all the time. And so if you find those people who are looking for that kind of meaning, it becomes a little bit easier to put together those intense teams.
And I think you just attracted that, right? Like from the beginning, because it's a pandemic. These people were on the front line testing, now vaccinating, and they, you know, I work with a lot of your employees one-on-one and having these conversations, and they're driven to this mission. They want to vaccinate as many people as we can. They want to make sure that our country gets back to a place where we can do these things and have one-on-one interviews and be around our family and stuff. And so that's been one of the most inspiring things working with you and working with your team is how connected they are to that mission. They want to give back. So I think you've done a great job with that.
Yeah, thanks. And like, how do we do it so quickly? And people have asked me that. It's like, how the heck did you grow this from 0 to 1,000? It's like, there's no way I could have done it by myself. It's all about finding those people. And you know, it's kind of like when you're in, I'm from Indiana, so I think of the Indy 500, and it's all about your pit crew, right? How quickly can they change the tires? How quickly can they refuel? How quickly can they, you know, fix something that's gone wrong? And when you have all those people who are in sync and who are motivated by this overarching mission, as opposed to some of the other things, like it's just fine if you want to take a 9-to-5 job and you're really concerned about the benefits, or you're really concerned about the hours, or you're really concerned about, you know, the 401k plan. That's great, but in a pinch, in a place like this, you got to be concerned about the mission first and foremost. So anyway.
I have really enjoyed working with you, and I think your story's cool. Like, how did you end up here in healthcare? Because you didn't start in healthcare.
Right.
But it ties back to that mission and giving back, which I think is super important to you at your core. That's what I've taken away. So, like, tell.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I grew up in a small town in Indiana. I went and served a mission for my church in Spain. I learned Spanish and kind of fell in love with that culture. Spent time in Mexico doing service projects down there for a few years. I jumped into politics because it was something I'm very interested in, right? Again, mission-driven, you know, making a change, positive impact. And so I got into that in 2012. And the most interesting thing about working in an environment like that, it's a lot like a startup. And you're surrounded by, and you think that, you know, 50, 60-year-old people in suits who are very experienced. I mean, this is the President of the United States. They're probably running the show. And you walk into the headquarters, and it's a bunch of 25-year-olds running the show, right? So just super ambitious young folks who have time and energy to get this stuff done. And so if you can land yourself, I always tell, you know, people who are kind of in college looking for internships and stuff like that, if you can land yourself in a position where you're with like-minded folks who are kind of going in the same direction as you, you're never going to have a lack for opportunities in the future, right? So I jumped into that. I worked in politics for a while. I went to school for a while.
Hold on. He's being super modest. He worked on 2 presidential campaigns. So that's amazing. Keep going. I just wanted to point that out.
That's right. So in 2012 and in 2016, and there's governor's races and Senate races and things like that. And you learn a lot about communication. You learn a lot about marketing and hitting that core audience and kind of tailoring a message to people to get a response. We're seeing some of that right now with some of the vaccine hesitancy and how do you hit those particular people. But also you learn a lot about organization, right? And how to hire people quickly. We basically built an organization of 600-700 people within 6 or 7 months, right? On both of these campaigns. And so this was kind of in my mind already that you can do it, right? It is possible if you find the right players. And so I went to school, didn't love it, dropped out, started a couple of businesses. We were doing some outsourcing for tech stuff.
I didn't know you dropped out of college.
Yeah.
Me too.
Really?
What? I was
That's
just
right.
interviewing people about how important continued education is,
Really?
and we were like, it doesn't matter. Like, even if you don't have a solid degree or you didn't get a degree, it doesn't mean that you can't. Like, I say it's a school of hard knocks. And sometimes, like, I'd put people up. I'd put you up against anyone who had a degree, right? Like, the streets teach you a lot.
Yeah, no, they absolutely do. It's in those first 2 or 3 businesses I started. None of them were extremely successful, right? But I was working really hard to get into a particular program at school. The hardest program I could possibly have wanted to get in. By the skin of my teeth, I got in, and I was looking at it. I'm like, I don't want to do this. This is not my future. So I dropped out, started some businesses, and I just learned so much from those experiences. And so I brought on partners. I raised some money. None of them were terribly successful. None of them lost any money. But it was it was the continued education, right?
Yeah.
It got me ready for the next stuff I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, I actually had a business that did sort of property management. We did a bunch of short-term vacation leases, that kind of thing, and I had employees all over the state of Utah. And that's why when the pandemic started, I had a bunch of folks who could run around and set up sites, who knew how to organize things. And so that's really how we got started.
And they were probably slowing down because you're not going to go and clean. I mean, you can't do any of that. So I had no idea. That's a cool transition. Those transferable skills. You had no idea you were doing.
Yeah, no.
That's awesome.
No, yeah, we really didn't. So the whole healthcare aspect, we really didn't have a lot of experience in. But that's the cool thing about healthcare right now is that up until basically March of 2020, there were a few people who made all the rules and made all the decisions for how healthcare works in the United States, whether that's insurance, whether that's provider care, whether that's at-home stuff or virtual services, right? And you kind of had to go through these, the hospital, and they're like, this is the way we've always done it. We can't do it any other way. But with COVID, this is the coolest thing is that all these new folks like myself and others who don't really have a lot of experience in this market are saying, well, why can't you do it like this? Why can't you tailor it more to people? Why can't people order their own lab tests, right? Why is there a hospital? Why aren't there sort of smaller, sort of emergency care kiosks that people can go to? And so in the midst of this global pandemic, kind of the medical healthcare hierarchy has fallen apart, and people have said, okay, you have a better solution, come and bring it to us. And that's what we found with our clients from states to municipalities to businesses.
Right.
They just said, wow, you can figure out stuff to deliver quality care quickly. We have some other problems we want you to work on.
I'm so excited to see what that looks like. That is going to be insane. You are the person to kind of break that mold. Like, I know if anyone can do it, it's this guy.
Thanks.
Okay, so I love that you're just talking about where you're transitioning Nomi Health and MedX to, because I do some recruiting for him, and we're always talking about how in this market, especially now, you have to market your company in order. People want to know who they're going to come and work for and what they're going to do. And then one of the questions that I'm getting asked by all the candidates when I'm interviewing for all sorts of different positions is, what are they going to do after COVID? And you just started talking about that perfectly. So I'd love for you to kind of touch on that a little bit more. Like, where do you see the organization going as more and more people get vaccinated? Diving into that public health sector, switching it up? Yeah,
absolutely. So again, Nomi Health is a company that acquired a couple of the companies that I started a week ago, so that was fun. So what we're doing at Nomi Health is basically trying to bring, instead of making people go to healthcare, we're trying to bring healthcare to people, right? And there's a few different strategies we have. One is in-home stuff, right? A lot of the time people can receive visits from doctors. And before the pandemic, you know what? Virtual healthcare was a thing, but it wasn't widely adopted or accepted.
Right.
I mean, Zoom blew up over the last year and a half, and so is telehealth essentially. And so there's a lot of things that can be done from home with a doctor. There's a lot of things that can be done from home that actually don't even require a physician. A lot of times we have programs that an AI can pick up on symptoms, whether that's mental health, whether that's feeding symptoms that you have for an employer, giving his employees assessments, or even individuals. So that's a big part of it, but also giving people the ability to order the right tests, right? Because what I think what we're also learning is that healthcare hasn't been especially tailored, and when you don't have control over it, you don't always get the results that you want, right? And so,
Right.
I mean, we know this when we go to a doctor. He tells us one thing. I just had a parent who had a condition. They went to one doctor who said, "You need surgery for sure. That's the only way we're going to get around this." And then she went to someone else, and they said, "You don't need surgery. You'll be just fine." Didn't get surgery. She's just fine. And so, how do we tailor this a little bit more? And how do we get people the answers to questions that they have about their own health? And a part of that is ordering lab tests as well, right? And so if we can send,
Yeah, I mean, that's what you do every time you go to the doctor is you're going to get your labs done.
And he
Figure out-
decides,
right,
right?
yeah.
But if we can send, DNA kits to people in their homes and have them, spit in a cup and send it back in and give them all these results, there are so many lab tests that we can actually do in people's homes as well, where they can find out, whether they have COVID, whether they have the flu, whether they have, strep, or any of these other conditions, so we don't have to constantly be going to a hospital for all these needs, especially for people who live in places where it's hard to access those facilities.
Yeah, and that's lower healthcare costs too,
Absolutely.
right? So I think that's amazing. So I think the moral of the story, and what I love to translate to potential employees, is that you're going to be around for a while, and what you're doing is innovative, and you're thinking outside the box. And so I think that's so exciting, and I'm excited to see the healthcare industry kind of get knocked off its feet and have to switch things up.
Absolutely.
So tell us, if you're interested in working, you're a nurse, let's talk about some of the positions that are open on both of those companies. Kind of what are you hiring for? We've talked a lot about massive growth. It's continuing to grow. So yeah, tell us about what positions you're hiring for right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So at MedX, we've got lots of positions all over the country. We're in Texas and Oregon and Colorado and Utah, Iowa, Nebraska. I want to go through them all, but all over the place. And so we're looking for people who want to be involved in bringing an end to the pandemic, but also in taking the next step for healthcare and bringing healthcare to people. So we're looking for, basically nurses. We're looking for pharmacists. We're looking for EMTs and paramedics and CNAs. Basically, people who want to be on the front lines.
Yeah.
We've got a little ways to go with the pandemic to finally, stomp it out.
Right.
And then there's going to be some maintenance because we have some different strains that are coming.
Right.
Also, the vaccines have announced that there's a third booster shot, and so there's going to be a lot more work for that. And so all those positions, I would say, are open. We even have some clinical leads in states where they'll be responsible for training and for assuring quality and checking in with our lead physicians to make sure that we're following all the state regulations. So really, with healthcare, it's across the board, people who want to be involved in the solution.
Yeah, and I love that. You get the opportunity to be on the front lines helping through the COVID, and then also with an organization that's really trying to break the doors open to healthcare in our country and do something different. And aside from that, there's the logistics side of everything that you do, which I think is a huge just part of your operation as a whole. So there are positions like warehouse manager, logistics manager. You want to talk into those?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you don't have to be a clinical person, you have to be a healthcare person in order to contribute to this really good cause. Like you said, warehouse folks we're looking for. We've got dozen warehouses all over the country at this point and adding more. We need field leads, which is a position where you'll go and make sure that all the operational things of a testing site are going well. Do they have the supplies that they need? Do they have the SOPs? Do they have trainings for bad weather or other unforeseen circumstances? Are we hiring at the right clip? Do we have enough? For example, sometimes in a state where we've hit the majority of the population, maybe there's a segment or some neighborhoods where there's a little bit more hesitancy about getting the vaccine. Right. So what could we do? Should we throw a neighborhood barbecue and get people out? Should we send canvassers into that neighborhood? Should we put up a few billboards and do some targeted texts to that neighborhood to get them out and kind of hit those objections right on the head about whether it's free or whether they need an ID to show up? And so there's a lot of creativity involved in just making sure that everything's operating well, in addition to just putting needles in arms or taking people's temperatures. And so there's a lot
you think the nurses, and I'm not taking away because their nurses are working crazy hours and they're putting their lives on the line to make sure that we're healthy. But the logistics that go behind it, I mean, I just look at some of the warehouse supplies, the list, the things to get set up in Colorado. I'm just looking at these things and my mind mind is blown sometimes at all of the nuances that it takes to kind of run the operations to be able to get a needle in an arm, what it took to get there. So there's tons of opportunities at the organization, tons of opportunities for growth and expansion and some great leadership, which is amazing.
And essentially, this is a startup still, right? This is just over a year old. And so for people who are, you know, like some of my brothers are in this category where they're just getting out of school, and they're getting their start, it's like, do you want to be a part of something that's on the front lines, that, you know, you're going to have some equity in, that's got good benefits, that's competitive pay, and that's also meaningful? I think you'll find that your first few jobs kind of put you on a trajectory for the rest of your career.
That is so true. The experiences that you get there, the leadership that you get there too, I think they, you know, your leaders kind of, they put tracks on your heart, right? As far as what you can do, what you can't do, and what your aspirations are going to be, especially when you're getting right out of school.
Absolutely.
Or your big kid job. I'm always referring to what was my first big girl job. And so I think this is a perfect place to get, you know, all those buckets filled.
Absolutely.
Okay, so if you are interested in applying, we will make sure that there are links below, and you can also check out our website, hrbymod.com, and on the NOMI website and MedX. So we'll make sure all of those links and the additional information to the open jobs are below. Oh, Patrick, it's been awesome to have you here. Thank you so much for letting me talk you into this.
Absolutely, thank you.
I think that the information that you have provided is just going to be so beneficial to startups and small businesses, and I'm so excited to see what kind of people we can bring into the company and help get you to the next level.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for your help. And anyone who's thinking that they're going to start something, anyone who's having problems with their HR right now, you're going to want to talk to Sydney, because she'll straighten you out.
That was sweet. I didn't even ask him for that plug, so I appreciate it. Thank you.